If your kitchen doesn't understand food costs, you're losing money, period. Not because your food is bad, but because your systems are. And in this industry, bad systems don't show up right away. They bleed you out over time. Today, we're talking about food cost, how to calculate it, and how everything in a restaurant contributes to the bottom line. All that right now on the IncrEDIBLE Discourse.
Pow! Right in the kisser!
So let's define this right away. Food cost, at its simplest, is the percentage of your revenue that you spend on ingredients to produce a certain dish. But in a real kitchen, it's not just a number on a spreadsheet. It's the gap between what a dish is supposed to cost and what it actually costs when your team executes it. And that gap is where kitchens either make money or quietly lose it. Most cooks think food costs lives in the office, and ordering, inventory, and spreadsheets. But it doesn't. It lives on the station. It lives in how you prep, how you portion, and how you store your product, and how disciplined you are when nobody's watching. Food cost gets hit in the same places every single day. A little extra on the plate because you think it looks better. Trim getting thrown away instead of being used properly. Over ordering because you don't set pars and you don't count inventory. Prep getting overproduced and dying in the walk-in. Product not being rotated, so now it fucking spoils. Dishes getting sent back, remade, or comped. And the reality is none of those things feel like big decisions in the moment, but food cost doesn't get blown away in big decisions. It gets bled out in the small ones. I learned that the hard way. As a young chef, you're usually in over your head if you're actually trying to grow in the chef role. And I remember being in an interview for a sous chef position a long time ago. And the chef asked me, "So, do you know how to calculate food costs?" And I said, "Yeah," because I needed that job. But the truth was, I didn't really know it like I should have. So he asked me for the formula and I started answering. I think I started off okay, mate. Cost of goods divided by sales. But then I kept talking. I started adding inventory and purchases and all this extra shit. And before I knew it, I had completely lost it. I said too much, mixed everything up, and just looked like I had no idea what I was talking about. So he kind of smiled, just a little bit, and said, "It's actually quite simple. Cost of goods divided by sales. That's it." And that moment stuck with me because it wasn't just about the formula. It was about the fact that I really didn't understand what I was talking about. And being put on the spot like that made it clear. I needed to know this shit. For real. Now, yeah, there's more to it than just cost of goods divided by sales, right? You have to inventory. You have to touch everything, count everything, understand actually what's moving through your kitchen. That's the only way you can account for waste, overportioning, spoilage, pretty much account for everything. And that's when it really clicked for me. Because if I touched the food, I could control the cost. Now, here's where most kitchens get this wrong. They hear food cost and they immediately think it's complicated, but it's really actually not. The math is really simple. The discipline is what's difficult. Plate cost is exactly what it sounds like. It's the total cost of everything that goes on the plate. Protein, garnish, sauce, oil, butter, everything, right? If it goes on the plate, it has a fucking cost. But the problem is most kitchens don't actually know this number. They guess. They eyeball it. They assume it's close enough. And close enough is where money starts to disappear. From there, food cost percentage is just that plate cost compared to what you're selling the dish for. If you take your plate cost and divide it by your menu price, that should tell you what percentage of your revenue is being spent to produce that dish. So, if a plate costs you $10 and you sell it for $30, you're sitting somewhere around 33%. That's the range most kitchens are aiming for. But what if you don't have a menu price yet and you need to figure out what to charge? Well, then you flip the equation. You take your plate cost and you divide it by your target food cost percentage. So if that same dish costs you $10 to produce and you're targeting 30%, you're looking at a menu price of somewhere around $33. The typical target food cost percentage is somewhere between 30 and 35%. And if you can get it lower without sacrificing quality, I'd say you're doing pretty well. And this number can be subjective, right? It's not all written in stone. It kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're running a hot dog stand on the side of the road, you may not want to go with the Kobe beef hot dogs, right? You might just go with the Oscar Mayer wieners. But if you're running a high-end fine dining concept, you probably don't want to serve sirloin when your guests are expecting filet. Your cost structure has to match your concept. That's how menus get built. This is also the part where you start to see the dish as a numbers game. When I do it, I usually create a dish with everything that I want in it in R&D. And then when I'm costing it, I can see where I need to adjust the recipe to maximize the revenue without compromising the dish. Maybe you have less garnishes and just go with one. Or maybe you need a little less sauce. Or maybe you choose onions over shallots in the base of the dish because shallots are traditionally more expensive. Or maybe you realize that the dish can't be compromised at all, but that the components are just too expensive for your menu and you have to pivot and choose a different route or dish. But the only way you learn how to build dishes and menus is by calculating the costs. On paper, it's simple, right? But this only works if after you calculate the costs and settle on the dish that every plate is built the exact same way every single time. The second someone adds a little extra or uses a heavier hand, wastes product in the prep, or has to remake a dish, that number is already wrong, right? Your food cost percentage isn't broken on paper, it's broken in execution. And this is where kitchens actually lose money. Not in theory, but in repetition. Waste that doesn't get tracked, overportioning that becomes habit, systems that are either they don't exist or they're not being followed, mistakes during service that turn into remakes and comps. And again, none of it feels major in the moment, but it adds up fast. Every mistake has a cost. The problem is most kitchens never stop to measure it, so they never fix it. Now, here's where this really matters, because food cost doesn't exist by itself. In a restaurant, every dollar that comes in is already spoken for. You're paying for food, you're paying for labor, you're paying for overhead, the rent, utilities, equipment, everything it takes to keep the doors open, right? And what's left after that is the profit. And the food cost is one of the only parts of that entire equation that you can control every single day on every single plate. When food cost goes up, profit doesn't just fucking adjust, it disappears. So that extra ounce you added, that prep you threw away, that remake you didn't think about, that doesn't just affect the food cost. It eats directly into what the restaurant actually keeps. And if that's the case, then the next question becomes, how do you actually take control of it? And that takes us to this week's
Quick Fix of the Week.
Pick one high volume item in your kitchen, just one, something that sells all the time. And for the next 3 days, you weigh every single portion that goes out. No guessing, no eyeballing, no, that looks about right. You fucking measure it. And then you take that number and compare it to what the plate is supposed to cost. And what you'll usually find is that your theoretical cost, the one on paper, isn't the same as what's actually happening on the line. And that gap is your problem. Because most kitchens don't have a pricing issue. They have a consistency issue. Control the portion and you start to control the cost. Now, if all of that is true, then this isn't just about numbers. It's about leadership. Because food cost is not controlled on a spreadsheet. It's controlled in the kitchen. It's controlled by the people touching the food every single day. And that comes down to discipline, not talent. You can have the most talented cook who plates beautiful food, moves fast, knows flavors. But if they don't portion correctly, if they waste product, if they don't respect the system, they're costing you money every shift. Discipline beats talent when it comes to food cost. And systems beat guessing. Because guessing is inconsistent. And inconsistency is expensive. Standards are what create consistency, and consistency is what protects your margin, and that margin is what keeps the business alive. So when food cost is out of control, it's not just a numbers problem, it's a leadership problem. It means your team either doesn't know the standard, or they don't respect it, or you haven't built a system that makes it easy to follow. You don't control food costs by yelling about numbers. You control it by building systems your team can actually execute. Systems that define portion size, systems that define prep, systems that define how product is handled from the moment it comes into the door to the moment it hits the plate. And more importantly, systems that are enforced. Because if the standard isn't held, it doesn't exist. That's the shift. You stop thinking about food cost as math and you start thinking about it as behavior, as training, as culture. And once you see it that way, you can actually start to control it. So here's your pro tip of the week.
Pro tips from the chef's list.
Teach cost, not technique. Super simple one this week, guys. It's truly that easy. You can teach knife skills, technique, and all that other practical shit. But if you want your cooks to care about food costs, you have to make it real for them. Don't just show them how to plate the dish. Show them what that plate is supposed to cost. Don't just tell them to portion correctly. Show them what happens when they don't. Teach yield. Teach waste. Teach them how small decisions affect the bigger picture. Because once a cook understands the cost, the standard stops being a suggestion. It becomes a responsibility shared by all of them. And this could be a lesson that takes them farther than any knife trick or technique you could ever teach them. So, today's final thought leads us to this.
Food for thought.
Food cost isn't about being cheap. It's about being responsible. It's about understanding that every ingredient that comes into your kitchen has a value. And every decision you make with that product either protects that value or it wastes it. But waste isn't just about product loss. It's opportunity loss. It's money that could have gone back into the business, into like better equipment, better staffing, better product, growth. And the kitchens that understand that, the ones that respect the product from the moment it comes into the door to the moment it hits the plate, are the ones that last. Not because they cut corners, but because they control what matters. At the end of the day, talent will get you attention, yes, but control is what keeps the doors open. So if this episode gave you something to think about, something you can take back to your kitchens today and actually use, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And if you know someone in your kitchen that needs to hear this shit, send it to them. Because this is one of those things that changes how you cook and how you lead. Next week, we're talking about innovation versus tradition and why you can't just evolve shit that you don't understand. So, thanks for listening. I'm Mark Grigsby, and I'll see you next time on the IncrEDIBLE Discourse.